I was accused of stealing my own car because I didn't look like the owner. The flashlight hit my face so hard I had to squint. Step out of the vehicle, now. 3 cop cars surrounded my Lexus in the grocery store parking lot, and I couldn't understand why my hands were already in the air before my brain caught up. I'd just grabbed milk and eggs. It was 9:43 p.m. on a Wednesday in May, and I was wearing my hospital scrubs because I'd just finished a double shift as a nurse practitioner. The officer's hand was on his holster, and I remember thinking this had to be some kind of mistake, some cosmic joke that would get cleared up in about 30 seconds once I showed them my registration. I was so catastrophically wrong about those 30 seconds. "This vehicle was reported stolen 2 hours ago," the officer said, and that's when my stomach dropped through the asphalt. My mouth went dry. "Officer, this is my car. I bought it 6 months ago. My registration is in the glove compartment." He didn't move. "Keep your hands where I can see them. Do you have identification?" I did. My wallet was in my scrubs pocket, and when I reached for it slowly, explaining every movement like I was defusing a bomb, I caught the way his partner's hand tightened on her weapon. This wasn't protocol. This was fear, and I was the thing they were afraid of. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that this moment would unravel into a 9-month nightmare that would cost me my job, nearly destroy my career, and expose a theft ring operating inside the very police department that was supposed to protect me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I bought that car, because that's where the trap was set. I just didn't know I was walking into it. 6 months earlier, I'd saved for 3 years to buy my first luxury vehicle. I was 31 years old, had just been promoted to senior nurse practitioner at County General Hospital, and I wanted something that felt like I'd made it. Not flashy, just nice. A pre-owned 2019 Lexus ES 350 in silver. I found it at Premium Auto Sales on the north side of town, a dealership that specialized in certified pre-owned luxury vehicles. The salesman's name was Richard Kowalski, and he had this practiced smoothness that should have raised flags, but I was too excited. "Beautiful choice," he'd said, running his hand along the hood. "One owner, perfect maintenance records, clean title. You've got excellent taste, my friend." The financing went through without a hitch. I put down $15,000, money I'd scraped together from overtime shifts and careful budgeting. The paperwork took 4 hours, and by the time I drove off the lot, I felt like I was floating. I remember calling my mom from the driver's seat, and she cried because her son, her baby who'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment with roaches and a father who disappeared when I was 5, was driving a Lexus. "You earned this, Julian," she said, and I believed her. I had earned it. Every single overnight shift, every difficult patient, every certification exam, it had all led to this moment. The car smelled like leather and possibility, and when I parked it in my apartment complex that night, I took a picture and set it as my phone background. For 6 months, everything was perfect. I drove that car to work every day, took meticulous care of it, kept up with the payments religiously. I even joined an online owners group where people shared maintenance tips and modifications. My life had a rhythm: work, gym, occasional dates that never went anywhere because I worked too much, and Sunday dinners with my mom where she'd make her arroz con pollo and ask when I was going to give her grandchildren. Normal. Beautifully. Devastatingly normal. And then came that Wednesday night in May, the grocery store, the flashlights, and the moment my normal shattered like safety glass. "This doesn't make sense," I said to Officer Stevens, according to his name tag, as he examined my license and registration. "I've owned this car for 6 months. I have all the paperwork. I have the loan documents from the credit union." He wasn't listening. He was on his radio, reading off my information to dispatch, and I could hear the tinny response. "Registered owner is a vehicle matching this description reported stolen at 1920 hours by Kathleen Montgomery. White female, age 53, registered address in Westwood Hills." I felt my mind stutter. Kathleen Montgomery. I'd never heard that name in my life, and she was reporting my car stolen? "There has to be a mistake," I insisted, but Officer Stevens just shook his head. "Sir, we're going to need you to come down to the station. You can follow in a patrol car. We'll get this sorted out." Sorted out. Like it was a clerical error, like my entire world wasn't tilting on its axis. They impounded my car. Right there, in the grocery store parking lot, they hooked up my Lexus and towed it away while a crowd gathered to watch. I saw my neighbor's kid pointing at me, and I wanted to disappear. I'd never been arrested before, never even had a speeding ticket. I was the person people called responsible, boring even. And now I was being put in the back of a patrol car because someone I'd never met claimed I stole the car I'd been paying for half a year. The police station smelled like coffee and industrial cleaner. They put me in an interview room, the kind you see on TV with the metal table and the mirror that's definitely two-way glass. I sat there for 90 minutes before anyone came to talk to me. 90 minutes where I replayed every moment of buying that car, looking for something, anything that might explain this. Had I missed something in the paperwork? Was this some kind of elaborate scam? My phone had been taken as evidence, so I couldn't call anyone, couldn't check my email for the purchase documents, couldn't do anything except sit and spiral. Detective Alan Greenberg finally walked in at 11:17 p.m. I remember the time because I kept staring at the clock, watching my life tick away in second-hand increments. He was maybe 50, built like he'd been athletic once but had settled into middle-aged thickness, and he had this expression I couldn't read. Not hostile, but not friendly either. Professional detachment. "Mr. Torres," he said, opening a folder. "Julian Torres, is that correct?" I nodded. "Can you tell me how you came to be in possession of a 2019 Lexus ES 350 silver VIN number ending in 8432? I told him everything. The dealership, the salesman Richard Kowalski, the financing through Metro Community Credit Union, the $15,000 down payment. I gave him dates, times, account numbers from memory, because I'd been so careful about everything. "I have copies of all the documents at home," I said. "The bill of sale, the loan agreement, the title transfer, everything." Detective Greenberg listened, taking notes, his expression never changing. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, just looking at the papers in front of him. "Mr. Torres," he finally said, "the vehicle you were driving tonight is registered to Kathleen Montgomery. It was reported stolen from her residence in Westwood Hills at approximately 7:20 p.m. this evening. She has the original title, the original registration, and photographs of herself with the vehicle dating back 3 years." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible. I bought that car 6 months ago. I have the title. It's in my apartment." He leaned back in his chair. "Is it possible you were sold a stolen vehicle?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I bought it from a legitimate dealership, Premium Auto Sales. They're a certified dealer. They wouldn't sell stolen cars." Detective Greenberg's expression shifted slightly, and I caught something that might have been pity. "Mr. Torres, we're going to need to see all your documentation, everything related to this purchase. In the meantime, I need you to understand the seriousness of the situation. You were in possession of a stolen vehicle. Whether you knew it was stolen or not, that's a felony in this state." The words hit me like a physical blow. Felony. My nursing license required a clean criminal record. A felony conviction would end my career, everything I'd worked for, gone. "I didn't steal anything," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked. "I bought that car legally. I've been making payments on it for 6 months. They let me go at 1:30 a.m. with instructions to bring all my paperwork to the station the next day. I had to call my friend Wesley to pick me up because my car was an impound and my phone had finally been returned, but the battery was dead. Wesley drove a beat-up Toyota truck and listened to my story in stunned silence. "That's insane," he kept saying. "That's absolutely insane, Jules." It was insane. It was also happening, and as Wesley dropped me off at my apartment complex at 2:15 in the morning, I felt like I was moving through a nightmare that had no end. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with every document related to that car purchase spread out in front of me. The bill of sale from Premium Auto Sales, signed by Richard Kowalski, the financing agreement from Metro Community Credit Union, the title transfer document, the insurance paperwork, the maintenance records, every oil change receipt, every payment confirmation. It was all there, all legitimate, all real. How could this be happening? I took photos of everything with my phone, uploaded them to cloud storage, made physical copies. At 5:30 a.m., I emailed my supervisor at the hospital saying I had a family emergency and wouldn't be in for my shift. I'd never called out before. Not once in 6 years. At 9 a.m., I was back at the police station with a folder 3 inches thick. Detective Greenberg met me in the lobby, and he looked tired. "Mr. Torres, thank you for coming in. Follow me." We went to a different room this time, a smaller office with a desk covered in papers and cold coffee cups. He sat down across from me and started going through my documents methodically, comparing them to something on his computer screen. The silence stretched out, punctuated only by the shuffle of paper and keyboard clicks. After 20 minutes, he looked up at me, and his expression had changed. Now it was definitely concern. "Mr. Torres, I need you to understand something. The documents you've provided appear legitimate. The signatures, the notary stamps, the VIN number, all of it matches what should be on a legal sale. But there's a problem." He turned his monitor toward me, and I saw a DMV record for a 2019 Lexus ES 350 with the same VIN number. The registered owner was Kathleen Montgomery. The registration date was 3 years ago. "This doesn't make sense," I said, and I could hear the edge of panic in my voice. "How can we both have legitimate documents for the same car?" Detective Greenberg tapped a pen against his desk, thinking. "There are a few possibilities. Title washing, where a stolen vehicle gets fraudulent documentation from another state. VIN cloning, where the VIN from a legally owned vehicle is duplicated onto a stolen one. Or," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "someone at the dealership sold you a vehicle they didn't actually have title to." The implications crashed over me. "So, I'm the victim here. I bought a car I thought was legitimate and I got scammed." He nodded slowly. "Possibly. But until we can verify that, you're still in possession of a stolen vehicle. Technically." I felt my chest tighten. "What does that mean? Am I being charged?" Detective Greenberg shook his head. "Not at this time, but the vehicle remains impounded as evidence. And we'll need to investigate the dealership. This could take weeks, possibly months. In the meantime, you're out a car and out the money you've paid. $15,000 down plus 6 months of payments at $480 a month. Almost $24,000 gone. What about Kathleen Montgomery? Does she get her car back? Another nod. Once we process the evidence, yes, it's her vehicle legally. The injustice of it was staggering. I'd done everything right. I'd saved money, I'd gone through a legitimate dealership, I'd signed legal documents, and now I was the one losing everything while the person who'd scammed me was nowhere to be found. What about premium auto sales? What about Richard Kowalski? Detective Greenberg's expression darkened. We'll be investigating, but I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that they're gone. Dealerships like this, if they're running scams, they tend to shut down and disappear once someone catches on. The building might be empty by now. He was right. I drove by Premium Auto Sales that afternoon in Wesley's borrowed truck, and the lot was abandoned. The building windows were soaped over, the gate was chained shut, and there was a "For Lease" sign stabbed into the dead grass out front. It had been a thriving business 6 months ago, and now it was a ghost. I felt sick. I sat in the truck for 15 minutes, staring at the empty lot, trying to process that my entire financial security had evaporated because of whatever had happened here. My phone rang. It was Metro Community Credit Union. The loan officer's voice was professionally apologetic. Mr. Torres, we've been notified that the collateral for your auto loan has been impounded as stolen property. We'll need to discuss your repayment options. Repayment options? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. I don't have the car. It was stolen, or I was sold a stolen car or something. I can't pay for a car I don't have. The loan officer, whose name was Patricia Freeman, sighed. I understand this is difficult, Mr. Torres, but the loan was made in good faith based on the documentation provided. The debt remains valid regardless of the status of the vehicle. I wanted to scream. I wanted to put my fist through Wesley's dashboard. Instead, I very carefully said, "I'll call you back," and hung up. That's when the real nightmare began. The criminal investigation was one thing. Detective Greenberg actually seemed sympathetic, willing to believe I'd been scammed. But the financial consequences were immediate and devastating. Metro Community Credit Union wanted their money. My car insurance company, after reviewing the police report, determined that I wasn't covered for fraudulent purchase of stolen property and denied my claim. The hospital's HR department called me in for a meeting because the background check company that handled our credentials had been notified of my involvement in a vehicle theft investigation. I sat across from Linda Ashworth, the HR director I'd worked with for 6 years, and watched her expression remain carefully neutral as she explained I was being placed on administrative leave pending the resolution of the criminal investigation. "Linda, I didn't steal anything," I said, and I heard how desperate I sounded. "I was scammed. I'm the victim here." She folded her hands on her desk. "I understand, Julian, and I want to believe you, but hospital policy is very clear. Any employee under criminal investigation involving theft or fraud must be placed on leave until the matter is resolved. It's not personal. It's liability." Liability. I was a liability. The person they'd trusted with patients' lives for 6 years was now too much of a risk to have in the building. "How long?" I asked. "How long is this going to take?" Linda's expression softened slightly. "I don't know. The legal process can take months. In the meantime, you'll be on unpaid leave. You can apply for unemployment benefits, and if you're cleared of any wrongdoing, you'll be fully reinstated." If I was cleared. Not when. If. I walked out of that office in a daze. In the span of 48 hours, I'd lost my car, my job, and my sense of security. I had rent due in 3 weeks, a loan payment for a car I didn't have, and no income. I sat in my apartment that night with my bank statement open on my laptop. I had $8,000 in savings. At my current burn rate, I had maybe 3 months before I was completely broke. I needed a lawyer. I called every attorney in the phone book, explaining my situation, and got the same response. This was complicated, it would be expensive, and most of them didn't take cases like this on contingency. I finally found someone willing to talk to me for a free consultation. Her name was Rebecca Foster, and she practiced consumer protection law out of a small office downtown. "Mr. Torres," she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought, "you've been the victim of what we call a title fraud scheme. It's surprisingly common with luxury vehicles. What typically happens is a dealership acquires vehicles through fraudulent means, creates fake documentation, and sells them to unsuspecting buyers. By the time the fraud is discovered, the dealership has closed and the principals have disappeared with the money." "Can I sue them?" I asked, because at this point I was willing to try anything. Rebecca looked at me with professional sympathy. "You can file suit, yes. But if the dealership is defunct and the individuals behind it have disappeared, collecting a judgment will be nearly impossible. These operations are designed to be judgment-proof. They use shell companies, false identities, and they move money offshore. Even if you win, you likely won't see a dollar." The despair must have shown on my face because she added, "However, there may be other avenues. If the dealership was bonded or if there's a dealer fraud recovery fund in this state, you might be able to make a claim. I can look into it, but I need to be honest with you about the costs. My retainer is $5,000. I didn't have $5,000 to spare. I thanked Rebecca Foster for her time and left her office feeling more hopeless than when I'd arrived. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I cried. I sat on my bathroom floor and cried like a child because everything I'd built was crumbling and I didn't know how to stop it. My mom called, and I couldn't bring myself to tell her what was happening. "Everything's fine, Mama," I lied. "Just tired from work." She knew I was lying. Mothers always know. But she let me have the lie because sometimes that's all you can do. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of unemployment applications that got denied because I technically quit my job by being placed on administrative leave. 3 weeks of loan payment reminders that I couldn't afford to make. 3 weeks of watching my savings dwindle. I sold my gaming console, my bicycle, anything I could live without. I ate rice and beans and tried not to think about the fact that I was 1 bad month away from losing my apartment. Detective Greenberg called occasionally with updates. They'd traced Richard Kowalski to an address in Arizona, but when local police went to check it out, the address was a mail drop. The trail was cold. Premium auto sales had been operated through a web of LLCs that all led to dead ends. Then, on a Friday afternoon 31 days after my arrest, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Julian Torres?" The voice was female, middle-aged, uncertain. "Yes, who's this?" There was a pause. "My name is Kathleen Montgomery. I think you have my car. Or you did. I don't know. The police told me to call you." My heart rate spiked. This was her, the woman whose car I supposedly stole. "Mrs. Montgomery, I didn't steal your car. I bought it from a dealership. I had no idea it was stolen." Another pause. "That's what Detective Greenberg said. He said you might have been scammed too. I wanted to talk to you. This whole thing is so strange." We met for coffee the next morning. Kathleen Montgomery was exactly as I'd pictured. Well-dressed, professional, the kind of woman who drove a Lexus. She brought a folder of her own, and when we spread our documents on the coffee shop table, the reality of the scam became clear. Our paperwork was nearly identical. Same VIN number, same make and model, but hers was dated 3 years earlier. "I reported it stolen because I got a notice from the DMV about a registration renewal I didn't file," she explained. "When I called to ask about it, they told me the address on file had been changed. That's when I knew something was wrong." "Someone cloned your VIN," I said, understanding clicking into place. "They found a Lexus that looked like yours, put your VIN number on it, created fake documentation, and sold it to me." Kathleen nodded slowly. "That's what the detective said. But here's what I don't understand. How did they get my information? My VIN number? My registration details? All of it. That information should be confidential." She was right. That information should have been confidential. It was stored in DMV databases, accessible only to law enforcement and authorized dealers. "Unless," I said slowly, "someone with access gave it to them." The implications hung between us. Kathleen's eyes widened. "You think someone at the DMV or the police department was involved?" I didn't know what I thought, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made my skin crawl. "I think we need to tell Detective Greenberg about this." We called him from the coffee shop, and to his credit, he took us seriously. "Meet me at the station in an hour," he said, and there was something in his voice I hadn't heard before. Urgency. Detective Greenberg's office felt different this time. He'd pulled in another detective, a woman named Carolyn Phillips, who worked in the financial crimes unit. She was sharp-eyed and direct, and she listened to our theory without interrupting. When we finished, she exchanged a look with Greenberg that I couldn't read. "Mr. Torres, Mrs. Montgomery, what you're describing aligns with an investigation we've been conducting for the past 6 months. We've had reports of multiple vehicle frauds following the same pattern. High-end cars with cloned VINs, fake documentation, dealerships that disappear. But we've been missing a key piece: how the perpetrators are accessing DMV records." "You think it's someone internal?" I said. It wasn't a question. Detective Phillips nodded. "We've suspected it, but we haven't been able to prove it. If we could establish a pattern, if we could show multiple instances where DMV data was accessed prior to these fraudulent sales, we might be able to identify the source." I felt something shift inside me, the first flicker of hope I'd felt in weeks. "What do you need from us?" Detective Phillips smiled grimly. "Everything. Every document, every email, every interaction you had with Premium Auto Sales. We're building a case, Mr. Torres, and you might be the key to breaking it open." Over the next 6 weeks, I became an unpaid investigator in my own case. I compiled every piece of evidence I had: credit card statements showing my down payment, emails confirming appointments with Richard Kowalski, even security footage from the day I picked up the car that I got from the dealership's neighboring business before their cameras were wiped. Detective Phillips was relentless, cross-referencing everything against other fraud cases, building a timeline, connecting dots. She found 4 other victims, all of whom had bought luxury vehicles from dealerships that promptly disappeared. All of the VINs were cloned from vehicles registered in the same county. All of the DMV records had been accessed in the weeks prior to the sales. The break came from an unexpected source. One of the other victims, a software engineer named Thomas Lynn, had installed a GPS tracker on his vehicle after a previous theft scare. When his new Audi was impounded, the tracker data was still accessible. Detective Phillips traced the vehicle's movements before Thomas bought it and found something interesting. It had been parked for 3 consecutive nights at an address in an industrial area. When they ran the address, it came back to a property leasing company. When they dug deeper into the leasing company, they found it was registered to a shell corporation. And when they traced the shell corporation's banking records through a warrant, they found regular payments to an employee of the county DMV named Leonard Finch. Leonard Finch was 49 years old, worked in the registration department, and had access to the entire vehicle database. He'd been with the DMV for 18 years and had a spotless record. He was also, according to the banking records, receiving monthly payments of $3,000 from the Shell Corporation for consulting services. Detective Phillips brought me in to review the evidence, and I sat in stunned silence as she laid out the case. Finch would access registration records for high-value vehicles, photograph the documentation, and sell it to the fraud ring. They'd use that information to create cloned vehicles, complete with fake VINs and titles. The dealerships would sell the cloned cars, pocket the money, and disappear. Finch would get his cut, and everyone was happy except the victims. How many victims? I asked. Detective Phillips consulted her notes. We've identified 16 confirmed cases over the past 3 years. The total value of the fraud is estimated at $1.2 million. I felt sick. 16 people, 16 lives disrupted, all because one DMV employee decided his government salary wasn't enough. What happens now? Detective Phillips's expression was grim. Now we arrest him, and we see how much he's willing to tell us about the people he was working with. They arrested Leonard Finch on a Wednesday morning, and I watched it on the news like everyone else. The footage showed him being led out of the DMV office in handcuffs, looking confused and frightened. The news anchor reported that he was being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes. The bail was set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. That same day, Detective Phillips called me. Mr. Torres, Finch is talking. He's giving us names, locations, everything. This is bigger than we thought. The fraud ring has connections to 3 other states, and we're coordinating with federal authorities now. Federal authorities meant the FBI, and that's how I ended up sitting in yet another interview room, this time with Special Agent Victoria Chen, explaining that I was now a witness in a federal case. Wait, no. I need to avoid the name Chen. Let me revise that. Federal authorities meant the FBI, and that's how I ended up sitting in yet another interview room, this time with Special Agent Victoria Ramsey, explaining that I was now a witness in a federal case. Mr. Torres, your cooperation has been invaluable. Because of the evidence you provided, we've been able to connect this operation to similar schemes in Nevada, Arizona, and California. We're looking at a multi-state fraud ring that's been operating for at least 5 years. What about my car? I asked, because as much as I wanted justice, I also desperately needed my life back. Agent Ramsey's expression softened. The vehicle you purchased will remain evidence until the trial concludes. However, we're working with the prosecutor's office to expedite restitution claims. You should be eligible for compensation through the Federal Victim Assistance Program. Compensation. It sounded so clinical, so insufficient, but it was something. And my job? My nursing license? She nodded. We'll provide documentation clearing you of any wrongdoing. The hospital should reinstate you immediately. Should, not would. Should. But it was more than I'd had a month ago, so I took it. The documentation came through 2 weeks later, an official letter from the FBI stating that I had been the victim of fraud and was not under investigation for any criminal activity. I hand-delivered it to Linda Ashworth at the hospital, and I watched her face transform from professional neutrality to genuine relief. Julian, I'm so sorry you went through this. Of course we'll reinstate you. When can you start? I wanted to start immediately, wanted to reclaim some piece of my normal life, but I was exhausted. Next Monday? I suggested. She agreed. That should have been the end of it. I should have gone back to work, rebuilt my savings, moved on with my life. But something was eating at me. The people who'd done this, the people who'd run the dealerships and created the fake documents and sold me a stolen car, they were still out there. Leonard Finch was in jail, but he was just one piece. Richard Kowalski was still free, still spending my $15,000, still laughing at all the people he'd scammed. It burned in my chest like acid, this need for complete justice, for everyone involved to face consequences. I called Agent Ramsey. What happens to the people who ran the dealerships, Kowalski and whoever else? There was a pause on the line. We're actively investigating. Finch gave us some names and locations, but these individuals are skilled at disappearing. We may not find all of them. That wasn't good enough. I want to help. There has to be something I can do. Agent Ramsey sighed. Mr. Torres, I appreciate your willingness, but this is now a federal investigation. The best thing you can do is continue providing evidence and testimony when needed. Let us handle the rest. But I couldn't let it go. I started doing my own research, spending hours online tracing LLC registrations and business licenses looking for patterns. I joined victim advocacy groups and found other people who'd been scammed in similar ways. One of them, a woman named Alicia Thornton, had been tracking premium auto sales for months. They didn't just disappear, she told me over email. They rebranded. I found a new dealership that opened 3 months ago called Elite Motor Group. Same area, same MO. I think it's the same people. I forwarded Alicia's information to Agent Ramsey, and this time I could hear the interest in her voice. Elite Motor Group? We'll look into it. Mr. Torres, if this pans out, you might have just given us the lead we needed. It did pan out. The FBI conducted surveillance on Elite Motor Group and identified 2 individuals who matched the description of people Finch had worked with. They set up a sting operation, sending in an undercover agent posing as a buyer, and caught the whole operation on tape. The fake documentation, the cloned VIN numbers, the cash transactions designed to avoid banking scrutiny. The raids happened on a Thursday morning 4 months after my initial arrest. Federal agents hit Elite Motor Group and 2 other related businesses simultaneously, seizing computers, financial records, and 16 vehicles that had been fraudulently documented. Among those arrested was Richard Kowalski, who'd been operating under a different name but was identified through fingerprints and surveillance photos. I watched the news coverage with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It wasn't satisfaction exactly. It was more like a wound finally beginning to close. Agent Ramsey called me that afternoon. "We got them, Mr. Torres. All of them. 7 arrests total, including 3 DMV employees in different counties who were part of Finch's network. We've seized over $2 million in assets, and we're tracking more. This is going to be a major case. 7 arrests. 3 DMV employees. The scope of the corruption was staggering." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now they face trial, and you'll likely be called to testify. Are you willing?" I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Absolutely yes. The trial took place 8 months later in federal court downtown. I sat in the witness box wearing my best suit, my hands folded in my lap, and told my story to a jury of 12 strangers. I walked them through the purchase, the arrest, the financial devastation, the loss of my job. I showed them my bank statements, my loan documents, my emails with Richard Kowalski. I explained how I'd lost almost $24,000 and 3 months of my life to a scam I'd been powerless to prevent. The defense attorney tried to suggest I'd been complicit, that I should have known something was wrong, but the evidence was overwhelming. I'd done everything a reasonable person would do. I'd been careful, thorough, and I'd still been victimized. When the prosecutor asked me how this had affected my life, I took a moment to find the words. I spent 6 years building a career, building financial security, trying to create a life my mother could be proud of. In one night, all of that was nearly destroyed. I lost my car, my job, my savings. I lost sleep. I lost my sense of safety. I walked into a grocery store to buy milk and eggs, and I walked out feeling like a criminal. That feeling stays with you. Even now, even knowing I did nothing wrong, there's a part of me that's still in that parking lot with flashlights in my face, trying to prove I'm not a thief. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and came back with guilty verdicts on all counts for all defendants. Richard Kowalski got 8 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $350,000 in restitution. Leonard Finch got 12 years because of his position of public trust. The others got varying sentences, all substantial. But the moment that mattered most to me came after the verdicts, when Agent Ramsey found me in the courthouse hallway. "Mr. Torres, the restitution orders mean you'll get your money back. It won't be immediate, and it won't be all at once, but the courts will seize assets and distribute them to victims. You should recover most of what you lost." Most. Not all. But most was more than I'd expected 3 months ago, when I thought I was going to lose everything. The insurance company settled my claim once the criminal convictions came through, cutting me a check for $12,000. The credit union forgave the outstanding loan balance as part of a settlement with the fraud victims. The hospital gave me back pay for the time I'd been on administrative leave, which came to almost $18,000. Piece by piece, I rebuilt. It took a year, but I rebuilt. I bought another car eventually, a modest Toyota sedan this time, nothing flashy. I couldn't bring myself to buy anything expensive, couldn't shake the feeling that it might be taken away. My mom noticed, worried about me, but I told her I was fine. And I was fine, mostly. I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd helped bring down a fraud ring that had victimized dozens of people. That had to count for something. But here's the thing. They don't tell you about being a crime victim. The trauma doesn't end when the criminals go to jail. I still tense up every time I see a police car. I still get anxious when I make big purchases, obsessively checking and rechecking documentation. I still have nightmares about being arrested, about losing everything I've worked for. Justice was served, the bad guys went to prison, I got most of my money back. By any objective measure, this story has a happy ending. Except it doesn't feel happy. It feels like I survived something that should never have happened in the first place. It feels like I lost something I can't get back, some fundamental sense of security that used to let me sleep through the night. 3 years have passed now. Richard Kowalski is still in prison. Leonard Finch is still in prison. The DMV overhauled their security protocols. The FBI used this case as a training example. And I'm still here, still nursing, still living my life, still driving that modest Toyota. Last month, I got a letter from the Federal Corrections System. Richard Kowalski was requesting permission to send me a message as part of his rehabilitation program. The letter would be screened by authorities, and I could refuse to read it. I almost threw the request away, but something made me check the box that said yes. The letter arrived 2 weeks ago. It was short, handwritten on ruled paper. "Mr. Torres, I know this doesn't mean anything, and I know you have no reason to care, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to you and the others. I told myself we were just running a business, that people like you could afford to lose the money, that it didn't really matter. I was wrong. I destroyed lives so I could live in luxury for a few years, and now I'm paying for it. I deserve every day of this sentence. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see now what I did, and I'm sorry. I read that letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table, trying to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe. Vindication. But all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying this anger. Tired of letting what he did define me. I wrote back, 1 sentence. I accept your apology, and I hope you find a way to be better. I don't know if that makes me weak or strong or just human, but it felt like closing a door that had been standing open for 3 years. The other day, I drove past the lot where Premium Auto Sales used to be. There's a daycare center there now, bright and cheerful, with a playground full of kids. The ghosts of that place have been exorcised by laughter and life, and maybe that's how it should be. Bad things happen, terrible things, things that feel like they'll break you. But life keeps moving forward, finding ways to grow over the ruins. I still have my modest Toyota. I still work at County General Hospital, taking care of patients who trust me with their lives. I still have Sunday dinners with my mom, who never asks about the car anymore because she knows it's a wound I'm still nursing. And sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, I pass through that grocery store parking lot where it all started, and I remember the flashlights and the fear and the moment my world shattered. But now, instead of feeling like a victim, I feel like a survivor. And maybe that's the real justice, the kind that happens inside you when you realize they didn't break you after all. They tried, and they failed, and you're still here, still standing, still fighting, still alive. That's worth more than any restitution check, any guilty verdict, any apology. That's the thing they couldn't steal, no matter how hard they tried. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.